Kunjabihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Danandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Rara Madhava Kunjabihari Ramadava Kunjabihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Rara Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Okay, Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhavakacharya Asata Sata Shishramad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhavakacharya Asata Sata Shishramad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Brahm Sekho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So, welcome to the Bhagavad Gita class. And we're in chapter 16. Of the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. And the title is called The Divine and Demoniac Natures. And we're covering text 17 tonight. So, first, let me do the prayers. Om Gana Tamarandasha Gana Gana Salakaya Chaksomalitam Yena Tasma Shri Guruve Namaha Chaksomalitam Yena Tasma Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Saitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swarupa Kadaimayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttaparakamalam Shri Gurum Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Sam Sajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapya Surubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaisnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we're at text 17 in the 16th chapter. Ātma-sambhāvitāḥ stabdhā. So I just would like to do a little quick review of this chapter and talk about how this chapter is divided. So in the previous chapter, chapter 15, Krishna has described the banyan tree of the material world. And he talks about in chapter 15 how the living entities get entangled in the material world and how the banyan tree is a perverted, upside down tree, perverted in the material world. The roots are up and the top of the tree is down. But in this chapter, he wants to talk about the fruits of this tree. What are the fruits of this upside down, perverted tree? So Krishna is talking about making the distinction between the divine qualities and the demoniac qualities. So the divine qualities are daivi-sampada, and in verses 1 through 3, he describes the divine qualities. And in verses 4 through 8, he talks about the asura sampada, which are the demoniac qualities. So we're in the section 10 through 20. And so Krishna describes the activities of the demoniac people and the consequences and their tendencies, their conduct, their attitude, their engagements, their thoughts, and their destinations. So he goes into real detail describing all these qualities, especially of the demoniac. So I just want to quickly, I'd like to just run through these qualities quickly, because sometimes, if we're not reading the Gita every day, then sometimes we may forget, so it's nice to, and we can't hear it enough, we have to hear it all the time, and it's never boring or mundane, because it's transcendental. So we need to hear it again and again. Also, so we can understand how we are developing these transcendental qualities, how we are working on trying to become divine living entities and cultivate all these good qualities. So one of them is fearlessness. And that means dependence on God, no matter what situation you're in. The perfect example is Srila Prabhupada. He's the prime example, the supreme example of dependence on God, no matter what situation he was in. And we know his history of coming to America on the boat, how he suffered. Sometimes we may ask, why did he suffer so much? Why? He had to go through all these, hardships. But Prabhupada never complained and always kept his faith in his spiritual master and in Krishna, because in his mind was serving his spiritual master and going on this mission with compassion and taking it to the West to give this knowledge. If it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada, I wouldn't be sitting here. If he hadn't come, I didn't know anything at all about the Vedic scriptures or about the Mahamantra. If he hadn't come you know. So it was very merciful of him, to come and spread this in the West. So, and then from there it spread all over the world. There's nobody in this material world who has accomplished anything close to what Srila Prabhupada has accomplished, whether everybody thinks they're famous or not. Like in this verse, it's talking about worship. Now, in this material world, people want to worship somebody. They worship certain leaders, or they worship certain musicians, or they worship rich people, or they worship who they think is great. But they don't know, who to worship. They worship the wrong persons. They don't know who to worship. But Prabhupada and Krishna are worshipable. And then purity of consciousness. So when we follow our prescribed duties and follow the prescribed rules, then our consciousness becomes purified, also by chanting. So we're going through the purification process so we can bring up our divine qualities, because as spirit souls, we are already divine. We have that purity, but it's been covered by the material nature. And also, we're cultivating spiritual knowledge. It's cultivation of spiritual knowledge. That's why we go to the Srimad Bhagavatam class. That's why we come to the Gita class. And we should be reading every day, so that we can maintain that consciousness. And so another one is charity. And that's particularly for the grihastas. That's their particular sacrifice. Everybody can give charity, but it says here that it's for the grihastas to give charity to all the other ashramas. And self-control. We have to practice self-control. That means, not getting angry unnecessarily. This is described also in the Nectar of Devotion. Not overeating, not over-accumulating, self-control. And we have to sacrifice. We make sacrifices. And our sacrifices are like coming to Mangal Arati at 4:30 in the morning. So many sacrifices we do willingly because we know that's part of the process of our purification. And we all are anxious to get the darshan of the Lord the first thing in the morning because it's so auspicious. When the curtains open and they put their merciful glance on us, so we become very happy. You can see in the morning when people come, they're so happy when the curtains open. And we have to study. We have to study the Vedic scriptures. That's why Prabhupada went through all the trouble. We have to read his books, especially. He went through so much difficulty just to give us this knowledge. And he didn't think anything about it being difficult. But he gave us so much. And he was strict in his schedule. He was very regulated, just so he could get up at 1 o'clock in the morning and write these books for all of us sitting here, for the whole world. We practice austerity. Austerities can be of the body, the mind, and the tongue. Simplicity means being straightforward. We have to be straightforward, not practice duplicity, say one thing and mean another thing. We have to be straightforward. And we practice nonviolence. That means not checking any entity's progressive life. Okay, say, we kill an ant or we kill any insect, then that means we have cut off their life and they have to start all over again in that same body. They were making progress. They're evolving. So if we kill any living entity in an animal or insect body, it means we have cut off their progression, their evolution to get to a human body. So that ahimsa means, and also ahimsa means not preaching to other people. If we're not preaching, if we're not giving what we're getting, then that's also a way of violence, because we're not concerned. We're supposed to be developing compassion. So we want everyone to get this now, not just us. An example is Prahlad Maharaj. When he was in school, and the teachers went out of the room, immediately he would begin preaching. Even though those students were only 5, he was 5 himself, 5 years old. Even though all the students were 5 or younger or older, that he took every opportunity to preach, because that's the nature of a devotee. I don't want to just go by myself. And he also prayed for his father, Hiranyakasipu. So he was very compassionate. Also, in terms of Arjuna was very compassionate as well. I was giving class yesterday on the Bhagavad Gita, and even though he didn't want to kill his relatives, and in some way he was fearful, but also it was because he had a soft heart. He was a staunch devotee of the Lord. He had a soft heart. He was compassionate. And he couldn't understand why I have to kill my relatives. That was his dilemma. Why I have to kill? I don't want to kill. And also in this chapter, it said that one of the reasons that the Lord also talked about these qualities was to enlighten Arjuna, because Arjuna thought, if I kill somebody, then I must have demoniac qualities. But that's the service of a Sattva. When he has a Sattva nature, his duty is to protect the citizens. And he's trained to do that. Because if you don't have that caste, then the rogues and the thieves will just take over. So you have to have someone who can deal with these people who don't want to follow any rules or regulations and want to disturb everybody else and do criminal activities. The government, I've heard Prabhupada say in a lecture, that the government only makes a prison because he knows there's going to be people who want to break the rules. They want to rob, they want to kill. So there has to be a prison. A prison has to be structured because you have to put these elements behind bars. So also we go to truthfulness. We shouldn't lie just for our personal interest. Sometimes I've had this instance, maybe, someone thinks one particular thing about you. They think, okay, this person, they're always, they have an example, they think, oh, this person is really nice, they're, honest, they're this. And then some situation may come into your life and you're going through this in your mind. Do I want prestige or do I want to be truthful? Do I want to tell the person, this thing happened to me, this thing happened to me, this thing happened to me, So we have to do an introspection of how are we developing these divine qualities? How we're actually examining ourselves to see where am I in this process? How many of these can I say I'm actually following or trying to follow? That's why we're chanting, so we can bring up. Prabhupada says that just to come to this process and to chant is just bringing us to the human level, just as human beings. So we have to also be free from anger. Even if someone provokes us to anger, we should be free from anger. We shouldn't get angry, because maybe whatever we think is negative reaction from someone else is maybe, there was an example of Srila Prabhupada when the devotees were upset because some person was criticizing Srila Prabhupada and was behaving angrily towards Srila Prabhupada. And his disciples got disturbed how this person was treating Srila Prabhupada. But Prabhupada's mood was, don't disturb this person. Maybe I did something to him in my previous life. So we always have to think positive in every situation. I heard this from in a lecture from Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. He says, whatever situation we're in, whatever situation a devotee finds himself in, he should always think positively about it. And I also just listened to Mother Narayani's class that she gave in the Vaishnavi Sangha, and she was saying that we should be grateful. We're always grateful for the good things that we get. Oh, it's wonderful. Krishna gave me this. Krishna gave me that. Krishna gave me this. But when something adverse happens, then we're not so happy. But we should also look at the positive side of that. Whatever we think is adversity, if we're under Krishna, if we surrender to Krishna, our spiritual master, there's nothing that's coming to us that's negative. It's all positive. It's for our rectification or our purification or elevation of our consciousness, or trying to see the situation in another light, that I deserve more than this. Because nothing Krishna does can be labeled as bad. Whatever Krishna does is all good all the time. So renunciation, whatever we get, we use in the service of Krishna. Whatever it is. Someone asked me yesterday about wealth. The person wanted, he was a young person, so he wanted to accumulate money. That's his focus. I want to be wealthy. And he asked, is there anything wrong with that? And I said, no, there's nothing wrong with getting wealth, but it's what you do with the wealth that makes a difference. Not that you be a miser and you keep it all for yourself, but you give it to the temple, you help the temple, or you give it to, for boga for the deities, or you give it to repair something at temple, or to build something at temple. If you use it in Krishna's service, then there's no problem with accumulating wealth. There's nothing wrong with it. It's how you use it. It's the use of it that matters, not to be selfish. And we should be tranquil. Devotees, the divine quality is tranquility. We're peaceful, we're equiposed, and we're unagitated. And we don't find aversion to fault finding. We don't criticize unnecessarily. We don't just criticize the devotee, especially if we don't have any position in ISKCON. The correcting behavior should come from those in authority who know how to do, if they're in management. Not that generally we just adopt a criticizing mood of the devotees, especially if we have nothing to do with the situation. The authorities, the management, they can correct, they can criticize. They're in that position. And we should have compassion for all living entities, from the hog, the dog, the rat, the cow, especially the cows, because we know cows are being slaughtered every day by the millions. And freedom from covetousness. Covetousness means someone has something and I want it. This is, I grew up a Christian, And this is in the Ten Commandments. Every book of scripture, like the Torah or the Bible and the Vedas, they have some principles that you have to follow. And in the Bible, it's the Ten Commandments. And one of the Ten Commandments is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or his goods or his things. So we shouldn't want something that someone else has. We're gentle, we're modest, we have steady determination. Even if we fail in something, we just keep being determined to progress in this this path back to Godhead. We have forgiveness. We practice forgiveness. Even if we think someone has done something wrong to us, we have mental and emotional strength, that's fortitude. We have cleanliness, internal for the mind and external for the body. And freedom from envy means we're not resentful. And we're free from the passion for honor and prestige. So these belong to the godly person, and these are the qualities that all of us are in this process to develop. So then we're getting to, he describes all the demoniac qualities. So I'll go to the purport. In the purport, I looked at Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's translation of this verse, and he says that these demoniac persons are respected only by those who are unintelligent. And they are unsubmissive. So, in order to take a spiritual master, we have to have a submissive attitude. That's the first thing we learn when we accept a spiritual master. In Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Tadvidi pranipatena paripasnena sevaya upadekshanti te pranam jnananas tattvadarshanaha. So we just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively. We don't challenge. If we listen to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, we can hear some people in the audience are very challenging to Srila Prabhupada, but of course Srila Prabhupada always has the answer to everything. That's what I love about him. He doesn't have to stop and think about it. He goes right for it. He understands the person's mentality, and he can address it no matter what the mentality is. So these demoniac people are filled with intoxication of pride. They have pride in their wealth, and they perform worship just to show off. So we have some examples in the scriptures of demoniac persons, like we know about Ravana. Now, Ravana, he knew Vedic scripture. He was a worshiper of Shiva, but he had demoniac qualities. He had the demoniac character. He wanted to take Sita and enjoy Sita without Krishna. And that's what the demoniac persons do. They want the wealth, they want the money, they want the goddess of fortune, but they don't want Krishna. They think, I'm Krishna, I'm God, so I don't need to worship God. I don't believe in God. For them, God doesn't exist because they're too puffed up with their own pride and what they have gained. But they don't know that they're in complete gross ignorance and that they are controlled by material nature. And because of this material nature, being controlled by material nature, they develop lust, greed, and anger. There's so many people in the world who have more money than they can use in one lifetime. But it's greed that makes them accumulate so much money and want so much money. You know, want to take everything that they can. And so we can see, like, the leadership of the world, they're all lower than sudras. Because all they do, the demoniac, all they do is create destruction in the world. We can see so many wars are going on, so much corruption in government. Who doesn't know that there's so much corruption in government because they're passing money under the table. Everybody's trying to get the money. You know? So it means that, you know, they're stealing from the populace for their own sense gratification. And in the times of the Mahabharata war, for instance, all the leaders went out to war with the army. But nowadays, the ones who have created the war, all the leaders, they sit in their office and they send the population to be killed, and they send them to war while they stay in their comfortable position. And I know, for instance, in Washington, D.C., like the Pentagon and the White House, they have built under the buildings, they have what they call them, I think they call them like bunkers. Someplace, if something happens that's devastating, they can escape. They can go under the buildings and protect themselves. So we can see the mentality, you know, there's no care for the population. And Yudhisthira's, the reason that Krishna wanted Yudhisthira and the Pandavas to take over the ruling of the Hastinapur was because they were righteous, and the people would prosper if they were in control of the ruling of Hastinapur. You know, whereas Duryodhana and the Kauravas only were concerned about themselves and their position and how they could, you know, get as much money as possible. And even when Yudhisthira and the Pandavas were there, Duryodhana kept plundering. The more money that the Pandavas collected, the more Duryodhana took the money and plundered it, you know, just to make them broke. So the attitude of the demoniac is stated in chapter 15, in verse 15. They say, "So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes." So we can see in the Bhagavad Gita that the Kauravas were scheming all the time how to take it, how to take the land, how to take the money, how to take his wife, their wife, Draupadi, how to take everything from them. And so that's what's happening in the world. Like, they want to take everything away from the people. They want to take that's why the taxes are so heavy, because they want to take everything from the people. And the people are still working like hogs, dogs, and asses. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future, more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him. And my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There's none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. So we see the mentality, of these demoniac persons. So they're just creating conditions for the killing of the general population. And it doesn't matter whether it's women or children or the elderly. They will do anything to obtain what they want. And here it says that thinking themselves all in all, not caring for any authority or scripture. So they see that they feel, I'm the authority here, I'm the authority. And then the innocent people get misled. So many cases historically in the past, people have followed the wrong person. I can think of so many incidents where people were following a certain person who they thought was religious and righteous and near to God. There was one, I forget the name of the incident, but they were following him so closely that he gave out a drink with poison in it, and they all drank it because they were thinking, well, maybe I'll get a next life or whatever happened. They're so blind, that they'll follow anyone. Prabhupada said, if someone claims they're God, you should ask them, show me your universal form. Let me see your universal form. And this taking the dress in the renounced order of life, and they engage in all nonsense in that dress. And Prabhupada talks about that as well. Because one of the reasons he was reluctant when his friend wanted to take him to see this guru, the Prabhupada said, I saw so many false gurus that I didn't want to go to see another guru. But his friend insisted that he go. So that's how he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But that's what was his reluctance. He saw so many false gurus. Smoking biddies and womanizing in the dress of a sannyas. So they create their own standard, they create their own path. And if I remember correctly, this comes from some incidences with Indra, who came dressed several times as a sannyasi, even though he wasn't a sannyasi. It may have been when he was trying to disrupt the sacrificial offering by Prithu. Does anyone remember? Prithu Maharaj, he wanted to do 100 sacrifices. But Indra, who always becomes envious and think his position is being threatened, so he was coming several times in the false robe of a sannyas. And this is how the falsity of sannyas came about, because Indra led it. He's the one that was dressed in sannyas. So they're all in illusion, due to ignorance, and they're being controlled by material nature. And they don't know that they're missing, this opportunity to become godly. But they don't care, really, just so long as their senses get gratified. So we are so fortunate. We're so fortunate to be in this process. Sometimes we may take it for granted, but it's a beautiful process, and our spiritual master is the one who made our good fortune, because Srila Prabhupada, one of his disciples, asked, how is it that I came to this process? How is it that I got this fortune? And Prabhupada told him, I made your good fortune. I made your good fortune. And that's so true. And he's made all of our good fortune. And every day we should be grateful to Srila Prabhupada for sacrificing so much for us to be on our way back to Godhead and to claim our real spiritual bodies. So I'll end it here. If anyone has any questions or corrections or comments. Any additions? Anyone would like to comment? Okay, we can end right now. I thank you very much for your kind attention. Hare Krishna.